This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I feel like what I've been saying after this game has been obviously that it didn't look good. Nothing. You did not walk out of that game offensively feeling any better about what you came into that game with, right? Even Jerome Ford having a good game is kind of dampened because Nick Chubb out for the year. You would obviously prefer Nick Chubb, but I also think that Browns fans should leave themselves some room to just process what went down, because that was a lot for one game. It's one thing to have somebody go down for an ACL injury, right? That happens in football. It's fairly regular. Nick Chubb was just like a unique, like, man, you just don't ever want to see a guy like, he has no enemies. I don't think he has a single enemy. And he went down with such a horrible ACL injury. And that's his second horrible ACL injury in his major football career. So you start to worry about the damage that could do long term to him. And honestly, you just start to worry about him in general. And then, yeah, there's more. And then Deshaun Watson puts together some of the worst football I think he's played since he might have been in elementary school. Like, I don't think he's had a worse game. The 6 games back last year were bad at times. This was just, I was finding a hard time. I find it hard to figure out what's going on there. And that was a performance that makes it hard to believe that that's going to get fixed in a week or two, right? Now, again, it's Pittsburgh. We kind of always look like garbage in Pittsburgh. So maybe it's just one of those things where it's just 1 week and they come back and they play well. But until they play that game, I think it's going to be difficult for this team, and more importantly for us, the fan base, to be able to turn the page and move on to next week, because just so much happened on national TV in front of the world that it's going to be difficult to forget this one.
It's tough. I don't think it gets any tougher than what happened on Monday Night Football, because you're right. It's not just any player. It's Nick Chubb. They said it a million times, heart and soul of this team. He's the guy that works so hard. His whole life is football, right? Like, he doesn't celebrate. He doesn't get too high, too low. He just goes out there and he plays hard. That's what his whole entity is. And for a guy that has very little to no real ego at all and just wants to play football and wants to do his job well, to have all that work put in to come back from that knee injury that he had in college, push through a restructured knee. A lot of people weren't sure what was going to happen with him in that moment, in that injury. His future is, what is he going to be able to recover and to bounce back and become Nick Chubb, to be the running back that he is in this league? That is the story of every athlete. That's who they aim to be. It's who fans love to root for. It's who coaches love to coach. It's who athletes of across sports want to be like. And so it's going to be incredibly hard for the Browns to turn the page, because it's not a normal loss. But this is the NFL, and injuries do happen, and you have to turn the page. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult, on top of that, not knowing, like you said, what we're going to see from Deshaun Watson. I know right now in this moment, a lot of people are trying to figure out what it is about the offense. And there's a lot of different possibilities of what's going wrong. I think there's a lot of people saying, it's the play calling and it's Stefanski on top of Watson's performance. But I think the majority of what happened Monday Night Football is no doubt bad play from Deshaun Watson. Because even if you don't like some of the ways that the guys were utilized on the field, I know the big qualm is that opening play right? Where Harrison Bryant on the, like, people didn't want to see Harrison Bryant out there to start the game. And I get it. Like, you want to see David Njoku, like Harrison Bryant is not your star tight end. You don't want to see that. But, Deshaun Watson has different reads. He has different, he did not have to throw to Harrison Bryant, and he threw it to Harrison Bryant. That's on Deshaun Watson as well. It wasn't a great ball, but Harrison Bryant, that's on Harrison Bryant. It went right to, if it hits you in the hands, you got to catch that ball. So, like, that's not, I don't have a problem with Harrison Bryant being on the field. You've got 53 guys on your active roster. Every single one of them should be able to play at any given moment. It shouldn't be about who's on the field and how you're using them. If they're open, if there's a play to be had, the players have to execute and make it. So, and guys were open all night. Deshaun Watson wasn't finding them. The issue is Deshaun Watson was in his head all night. He could not get anything going. He could not put a drive together. And that, to me, is the biggest question mark of them all. And that's the question mark you don't want to have. There was, how long will it take to get him to that elite quarterback that the Browns went out and got? That was the question entering the season. How long will it take for him to, find himself and find that groove? After that performance, the question is turned into, can he get back to that elite quarterback? Is it? And I think that is what makes that loss so heavy, because it's just one loss, but everything piled up the way that it did, and all of the question marks that came from that game are the polar opposite of what you want after the offseason moves that you made. You can't have those question marks. So it's going to be tough, but the Browns have no choice. It's their job to move past it. And the fan base, it's going to be even harder for them, because it's not their job to move past it. It's their job to care about the team being successful. And when they're not, it makes it very hard to forget, and move on. So you can't fault anyone for being mad and pointing fingers in the fan base. But at the same time, like, the Browns have a lot of question marks to answer, and they've got a short week to do it this time. So they have a big challenge ahead of them this week.
One thing you worry about when you see a quarterback struggling like this, because we've been through this with quarterbacks before, especially like it's most well documented with Baker. But when you struggle like this, there comes a point to where the offense loses faith in you. And I wonder how long that's going to take, because I think since Watson has such a good career before he got to Cleveland, people are going to give him a lot of time, especially in that locker room, to figure out whatever's going on there. So this isn't like, Baker had the one good he just didn't have the resume behind him to have these types of struggles. But I mean, we saw it happen with Russ, right? Like, it'll happen to anybody. If you don't put up the play after a while, that confidence is not going to be there with your offensive guy. And then the problems just feed into more problems. Where do you feel like they are with that, right? Like, has this been something to where the offensive guys have kind of been dismayed all offseason to this point? Or is this like hey, what the hell just happened in that game, Deshaun, kind of thing?
I think it's the what the hell just happened in that game, because I think in the offseason there was so much promise. I think they did have really good connections. Like Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore, I think of specifically of how much they worked on the side, how much they grew their connection, how much faith they had in each other, how much they raved. Like Elijah Moore raved about being able to play with Deshaun Watson. Amari Cooper has really worked on that connection with him. David Njoku is in the press conference. That boy's slinging it. Like, he was just like really, really hype about Deshaun Watson all preseason and through training camp. And so I don't think it's been a process, because I think up to this point, anything that like some mess ups, like that's the time to do it is training camp or preseason. Week 1, there was enough that I don't think it was a spiraling moment. He had some really good passes, and they made some adjustments, and you based it on the weather conditions. That was kind of the idea behind why it was not so great. Was, okay, the weather we didn't expect it. We'll figure it out. There was no weather condition in Pittsburgh. It's a hostile environment, of course. It's Pittsburgh, but there's no weather. That was a perfect opportunity for you to have a bounce back game. And so I think that this is the game that will kind of say what happens with how the offense is feeling and how they move forward with Deshaun Watson. But I think what needs to happen, and I saw it a little bit but not as it has to be continuous. Deshaun Watson has to be accountable. Like that's the worst word. I'm sure Browns fans hate hearing it. And we've heard it a lot, but like at the end of the day, no matter what happens, even if it was Stefanski not scheming guys open, which was not the case in my opinion, plenty of guys open for Deshaun Watson to hit, even if it was all about the offensive line struggling, which it did happen, and Jedrick Wills had moments and we all saw it, and that is another question mark that they're going to have to figure that out. There needs to be way more consistency from him. That you can't have games like that. But even through all of that, Deshaun Watson is a quarterback that they thought was going to be elite. They brought him in here because they wanted high-level quarterback play. This is not going out and getting some random veteran that is serviceable to just get the job done. That is not his role. He knows it. The team knows it. His role is to be elite. And it might not happen overnight. Everyone knew it might not happen overnight because there was that time you hadn't seen it in a while. There's a lot of things for him to overcome. But his job is to be elite. He has to get to that level if he is living up to what the Browns wanted him for, why they went out and got him, why he's on this team. And so all of the things that went wrong aside, Deshaun Watson has to be the kind of quarterback that can play through that. The top level quarterbacks play through that.
Exactly.
They look good in moments still. You have some bad moments, of course. I think back, he is not relatable to a lot of different quarterbacks, but Patrick Mahomes in that first game, his receivers could not catch the ball. But he still went out there and he still looked good. He still looked the part. He looked like he did his job. He was Patrick Mahomes in those moments. Even if Kadarius Toney's dropping passes, he is still Patrick Mahomes. You're not seeing Deshaun Watson the way that you need to see Deshaun Watson. So all of that aside, like he's not playing where he needs to be. He's not playing elite. And that's the big problem here. That is where he needs to be realizing. And the accountability, I say that because I think that he really needs, it's not just like, I got to play better. It's, I was brought into this organization because they have had years of looking for me, of looking for a guy who can do what I do. And I think that he needs to fully embrace what it means to be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns and what they went out and got him for. Everyone wants to talk contracts and everyone gets a little weird when you're looking at money and you keep bringing up the contract and watching somebody's paycheck, right? But this team went out and did something it hasn't done in a very long time. They put all their eggs in a basket and they answered the question of a quarterback. They tried really, really hard, whether it was the answer or not, they tried really hard to address years of this problem. And I would like to see Deshaun Watson understand that while he was not here, yes, there is a history and there is a meaning behind what they did to get him, and really, truly embrace this role and what he has to be for this team to get what they need, because it means more than just, hey, here's a contract, you're playing football. It means more to the fan base. It means more to the organization as a whole, the history of this organization. He is in a position to get that 2016 rebuild and capitalize on it. And so I just want to see him care a little bit, and maybe not more, but just vocalize it and just be cognizant of how important it really is for him to be a top tier quarterback.
Yeah. And a part of me wonders if that pressure is part of the problem for him. Part of me wonders, like I look at him and I try to just leave everything on the field with this. Part of me wonders, like, he looks like a player who's used to practicing a lot. You know what I mean? Like, even if you look at the throws that he did well, those were like the 50-50 ball kind of fade balls that he got the first downs with. And he did a really good job placing those balls and everything. But when it comes to like the real game speed stuff, right? The pressure's coming up the middle. I need you to stay there and trust that this dig's going to come open. It's not there, right? The ability to throw with anticipation. I've noticed something with him where it's like, when you look at him in Houston, the ball and the player that's catching it constantly in motion. That has not happened. Again, that's where it comes back to, it looks like practice out there. Where you watch it in practice, people aren't in motion all the time, right? You're able to get that extra half a second to get the ball off and make up your mind. And it looks like, and I think some people pointed out that he looked like a rookie at times. And I think that's an accurate observation because he has that same adjustment to the speed of an NFL game that you're seeing Bryce Young have. It's fascinating to see it happen to somebody who's played well at the NFL level, but I mean, he's been gone so long that maybe there's a readjustment that's much longer than any of us anticipated, because that's what it looks like. It looks like, and again, we saw him last 6 weeks of the season, big break, and then a couple of games this year. So maybe this is like, hey, by the time we get to the bye week, he's not taking as long. He's hitting guys in stride again. It looks a lot better because honestly, it's all there. He's just a little late. He's just half a second late, or, he holds on just long enough for the defensive line to affect the throw, or, like all those tip balls were on him because the ball should have been out earlier. Even the tip ball interception from week 1. And part of me wonders, is this just like a dude does it look like a guy who's completely lost his confidence at the position and is not going to regain where he is? Or is this just a guy who's been practicing too much over the last 3 years instead of playing football?
Yeah, I think that to me, it feels like it is a lot of a lot of practice reps and a lot of trying to replicate what you're doing in practice. And you can't do that in game speed. It doesn't equate on the field the same way. But I think, for me, I don't know. The confidence, I don't feel like it's shaken. He never seems rattled in any moment where out after a game or before a game when he's talking. He seemed rattled. Like Monday night, he seemed rattled because he clearly seemed frustrated. And that's another thing that was a little frustrating to see him frustrated, because of all the times he's a human, things happen, you get frustrated in these games. But composure is so important. And
I've never seen him be like, he's usually smiley, happy, go lucky on the field, like trying to compete. I've never seen him try to start a fight on the football field. And that's something that happened last night.
2 face masks. One was what it was, but the other one was clear. A quarterback getting 2 face mask calls in a game. What's going on here? You could see he was frustrated. You could see he was starting to lose composure. And first of all, you never want your quarterback to lose composure ever. That's one of the big requirements of, being a very good quarterback, is maintaining composure and leading your team. But it's more important, I think, this year than even last year in the last 6 games, because, and it's symbolic, sure, but he is a captain. They put the C on his chest. He is now leading this offense. They put him as a leader, as a known outright leader. When you have the C on your chest, it's just symbolic. It's just a patch, but it's more than that. It means more than that. It has to mean more than that. And so I did not think that was a great sign, losing composure. But again, it's Pittsburgh. So all of this could totally change in Cleveland, right? When he's back at home, it could just be that environment, playing in Pittsburgh, in that stadium. It's a bad history. Just like the Browns, I think, have the Bengals number. I think the Steelers might just have the Browns number in Pittsburgh. I think that just might be where things are at right now, especially when you've got the question where they're still working through some things. I think it could just be a very, very, very bad night. But the fact that it was so many different things and kind of heightened problems of things that we've seen already from week 1 and then from last year, that's where it's concerning. And I think that's where it needs to be addressed. And the game speed thing, and what can you do other than just keep playing games and trying to get used to it? But, you're 8 games deep. How many will it take? It's unprecedented, really, the situation that he was in, of taking 2 years off and then being suspended 11 games and then playing 6 games and then a big break. And now 2, this is not something that happens often.
You know what Deshaun Watson and this Browns offense needs? They need to like a game against Rutgers. Like this is what Rutgers is for, where it's like, all right, we're a little shaken. Let's go beat a team by 40 and move on with our week. Because like a lot of this is like he just hasn't had a good game in so long that he's as frustrated as this as we are watching it, if not more. And he knows. And it's not just like, oh, he's just missing throws. If he was just missing throws, I think he would feel a lot better about his ability to fix that or something like that. This is like, dog, it's like 1/4 second I'm not getting this out, or I'm not getting this out on time, or I'm not seeing this clearly, or it's frustrating to know that you could have had a much better result and you continue to not be on time for the result that you want. And I think that's what's frustrating him the most, is that he knows that he's able to do this. He's done this before, but for whatever reason, he can't just snap back like he wants to mentally when it comes to like the mental processing and getting used to the chaos that is NFL football. And also, oh, by the way, like, I think it goes worth mentioning, this isn't just chaos of an NFL football game. It's ratcheted up a notch because you're in the AFC North. And what I don't think people outside the AFC North understand is not every division has these blood rivalries every week within the division, right? I remember they asked Deshaun a question last year about his rival in the AFC South. He couldn't answer it. They had no rival. Like, he was legitimately stumped at that. And even if you ask him, hey, who was his rival in Clemson? It's like, I guess one of the Carolina teams. Like, I don't know. It's not really a rivalry, right? And then you get into this environment in the AFC North where it's Ohio State, Michigan 3 times a year. Like, well, not 6 times a year, right? Road and home, the intensity is crazy. It's unlike anything that anybody's played in. And oh, by the way, all the teams are really good, have staff that been there a very long time. And you can see how, like, it's a combination of, look, even if he had just came here plastered from 2020, this would have been a massive adjustment for him.
100%.
And the fact that he is coming from this long of a break and then here, it just makes it even more massive. And I don't think anybody, including me or Deshaun Watson, understood the scale of the adjustment he was making coming to play football here in the AFC North, because it's different mentally, it's different physically, it's different when it comes to how much energy you have to expend just getting prepared for these games. It's a different beast in this division, and that's why it's been like this for 20 years. And I don't think anybody anticipated that would also be a factor in this. And I think all of these things are combining into a very frustrating package for this Browns offense. And look, there are going to be people who want to be premature on the conversation of whether they got to get rid of him or whether they got to start DTR. There are going to be people who are going to be premature on that conversation. Obviously, they're going to take some time to figure this out. But I will say, if it continues to look like this and we're in November, yeah, writing's on the wall.
That's like the problem then.
Yeah, like that there's that at that point, it does not become ridiculous to talk about maybe DTR getting in there, because you don't want to end up in a rush situation where you're kind of just stuck with it. They know what it is. Like, even when he plays good, they know not to trust it. We saw what happened on Sunday with the Broncos, right? So you don't want to end up in that spot. You can't get rid of him, right? He's gonna be here. Sure. So it's like, all right, well, we're gonna have to gonna have to do something if this continues to be this way, because honestly, I don't know what can fix it if he can't adjust to the speed, if he can't get used to it again. The cold truth could be, if we're in November looking at this again, maybe he's just not going to be able to regain that level of play. And if he's not, then there's a real question of, hey, if Deshaun cannot be the Deshaun that we've seen in years past, then the truth is that DTR is a better fit for what they want to do, because he gets the ball out quicker. So it's kind of a Trey Lance, Brock Purdy thing, right? Like if it gets to November like this, it can become one of those situations. And unfortunately, I don't think that's a far off possibility. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting here in November having a more serious tone about this conversation.
I think it's easy to see that because that's the trajectory so far through these first 8 games of Deshaun Watson from last year and into now. But I think the silver lining is that it is week 2 and the Browns are 1-1. I think what makes it so much more doom and gloom is the fact that this offense really operates, whether fans are happy about how many carries he gets a game or not. This offense operates through Nick Chubb. That having him out there opens up what you can do on that field. When you don't have Nick Chubb, when you even Jerome Ford, he did very good in Chubb's absence.
But teams aren't going to respect him like they respect Nick Chubb.
Exactly. And so they're like, you load the box up. You're not going to have Jerome Ford, the threat of him just chipping away and going and grinding down the defensive line until you get something. I don't think that is what you expect as a defense. You don't expect that. And I think as the Browns offense, you're not going out there as your game plan. I think Jerome Ford can be a very, very good running back. And I think he can do the job, but it's not going to be the same. Teams aren't game planning you the same way that they game plan you when you have Nick Chubb. And so what you're able to do with, and that was again with this season, there was this big promise of Nick Chubb being able to be involved in the passing game and to take that leap and to expand the offense even more. Now you lose that. And so where does it go from here? How does this offense continue to blossom, and how do you get the most out of it when you don't have a very key player as an offensive weapon on the field? That's where it's a little, and so the silver lining is there of that it's week 2 and it's week 1. I think it's just heavier because you don't have Nick Chubb now, and you don't have Nick Chubb. And so how can you be creative? And this is where for me, it's going to be all eyes on Kevin Stefanski, is to see how he's able to put guys out there, the personnel he uses, the plays he calls up. Now that you don't have Nick Chubb for a full season, it wasn't just the end of the Steelers game, it's now the whole season. How can you incorporate Elijah Moore? What players, and Andrew Berry, who are you going to go out and get? Who are you looking at? How are you going to address this loss? And how can you get creative to keep the offense able to be explosive with or without Deshaun Watson's play? Guys being open, the way that you're running that scheme, how can you put him in a position? And if you keep seeing guys schemed open, and he's just missing some passes, then you're in November and you're like, okay, this is a problem. But right now it's early in the season. There's time for Deshaun to step up, and you're playing at home. It's a short week, but you're playing at home and you're playing the Titans. This is a great opportunity to bounce back. AFC game, go out there, bounce back, and start to put it together and start to figure out what you can do to answer these question marks. But it's early, so it's not all doom and gloom. Just a really, really, really tough start to this season that was supposed to be it was just so full of promise just a couple days ago, right? And
Hey, 1 week we're ready to moonwalk to Las Vegas. The next week we're ready to moonwalk into a grave. And if we win the next 2 weeks, we'll be ready to dance to Las Vegas again.
Every time.
We underestimated at the beginning of the season how much our mood swings with these wins or losses. But Cam, thank you for coming on. Appreciate you having your insight. Make sure you check out Cam on Twitter and on News 5. Appreciate you. See you next week.